Thank you, Liz. So welcome, everyone. Good to see you. I'll start with the note regarding etiquette. So may I remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet and a recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can you please put your hand up if you can be seen on screen or use the yellow raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when you're addressing the committee, then please let me or the Democratic officer know. If you have a webcam, then try turning this off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so you can at least hear and be heard. So we'll get straight into it with agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. I've only had one, and I believe Democrats only had one. That's Martin Price, one of our co-opted members. Rhys Goodjohn.
Yep, I have Alice Emerson.
I didn't catch that, Rhys.
Alice Emerson, I have authorities.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? No, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest.
Yeah, on the advice of Democratic Service, I'd like to declare an interest in item 5 and 6. As I'm a council tenant and we'll be discussing the end of closure accounts and capital closure accounts, I wish to declare that, and under the members' code of conduct, I have the right to vote and speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 3, presentation on the curriculum for Wales, journey to 2022 summer term 23 update. So over to Caris.
Okay, Noswaith everyone. Over the last 2 years really, there's been termly updates to Scrutiny on the curriculum for Wales. Now that's taken different, presentations in different ways. Sometimes we've had updates on the progress of schools. Schools have also shared their curricular journey with us. And occasionally we've also looked in greater detail at particular areas. So for example, in December, we spent some time looking at Welsh and Welsh across the curriculum and Welsh in informal settings as well. The focus for the presentation today is religion, values and ethics, and we're joined by Nikki Hagendijk, the Area Lead for Humanities at Central South Consortium, Donna Graves, the Associate Advisor for RE and Religious Values and Ethics and SACRE in the consortium. We're also joined by Nerys Jones from Whitmore High School, and you'll also see that we've had a contribution from Helen Carr, the Humanities Coordinator from Bontfine Primary. So I'll pass over now for the presentation, but there will be an opportunity to ask any questions at the end. Okay, diolch yn fawr.
Thank you so much, Caris, for the introduction. Yes, I'm Donna Graves, the Associate Advisor for RE, and SACRE and SAC within the Vale, working with Central South Consortium. And we're just going to give you a presentation, a brief presentation of an overview of some of the things that we've been doing to support schools within the Vale in the last 2 years or so, but particularly this year as well. And Nikki's going to also contribute as the area lead to her work with the cluster in humanities. So religion, values and ethics is a brand new subject in the curriculum for Wales. It's been rebranded to really fit the 21st century society that we have within Wales and the wider world. So it remains in the main Christian, while taking into account of the teaching and practices of other principal religions represented in Wales, but it no longer stipulates which world faith and which world religions are to be incorporated, as the old framework used to stipulate as to which key stage you could actually deliver certain faiths. So that constraint has been removed. In addition, we also have the range of non-religious philosophical convictions that are held in Wales. And we're doing a lot of training and supporting particularly practitioners, because this tends to be the newer aspect of the curriculum, developing their knowledge and understanding of what this actually means, giving them examples and supporting them in their planning and their actual delivery of non-religious philosophical convictions or worldviews. So it now sits within the curriculum for Wales for the first time. And it's one of the five humanities subjects. It is one of the 4 mandatory subjects within the curriculum. Obviously, it used to be 5 to 18, so there has been some changes there in terms of 3-year-olds up to 16 for the learning continuum, and it will become optional from 16 to 18 as the new curriculum rolls out and the legacy sort of dies off. One of the largest sort of changes to the curriculum is the fact that there's no right to withdraw from RVE. That is from the academic subject that sits within humanities. Because it now has to be, and it should always have been, but it now has to be delivered and planned for with regard to objective, critical and pluralistic in all classrooms by all practitioners. So therefore, there should be no need for any pupil learner to be withdrawn because they're not being indoctrinated. They're not being sort of participation in faith activities. They are learning about religion. They are learning about beliefs, values and ethics from both religious and non-religious viewpoints. So it's not about the participation. So we're giving some guidance on language and thinking about when practitioners are planning perhaps the old RE, there may need to be some adjustments in line with the objective, critical and pluralistic. So within the curriculum for Wales, the statements of what matters within humanities, there are 5 of them. They are mandatory and RVE contribute to those statements of what matters throughout the continuum of 3 to 16. We also have the Principles of Progression Code, which are mandatory. Mandatory meaning that schools have to do it, it's a legal requirement. And obviously it sits now within the humanities area of learning for the first time. So some schools are approaching it from a integrated approach. Others are having sort of a mixed approach. We're having some standalone, but also some integrated where it's appropriate, and others are still going down the sort of independent route and keeping it separate and distinctive to other humanities, but they still have to refer to the statements of what matters, which is a legal requirement. In addition, oh, sorry, thank you. In addition, we also have the RVE guidance on HUB, which is statutory, which means you have to have regard to it. And as the Minister says, you need a really good reason to deviate away from it. It actually gives an extra layer of information, of support and ideas through the learning journeys. It also gives an extra layer of concepts to practitioners for RVE, and practitioners need to have regard to it. So we're going through a lot of support and work on that when we're out in schools. The Vale of Glamorgan also have an agreed syllabus. RVE is still locally determined, even though it sits within the curriculum for Wales and within the humanities AOLE. So again, practitioners need to have regard to that. And the local SACRE and SAC were involved with the LA when they were convening the ASC, the Agreed Syllabus Conference, and have written and published their locally agreed syllabus. So it's in Welsh, it's in English, it's available in 2 different places. It is published on the website for the council. There is a SACRE page, SAC page, and also on the CSE website for practitioners to use. And we signpost it to obviously schools in the region. For schools with a religious character, there is an additional expectation, and there's also additional support for them. So we have on the left-hand side there, the Church in Wales, and they have produced an online resource, Religion, Values and Ethics, and it goes into quite a bit of detail and lots of information and guidance about unpicking what the RVE guidance means for Church in Wales schools and practitioners. And we've actually found that some non-religious, non-faith schools actually also access this, and we sort of pinpoint them to it because it is quite supportive in that way. And obviously we have the RED for the Catholic schools as well, that sets out clearly the expectations for RVE there as well. So just to give you a quick overview of some of the things that we've done to support schools from within, whether it's RE, religious education, religious studies, and RVE. There's sort of 3 branches to the subject at the moment. And obviously we have cluster support, which Nikki's going to talk to you about now.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, so the cluster support is focused on humanities, which obviously includes RVE. A lot of clusters in the Vale are working closely together. Quite often we've supported clusters through initial inset days, and then several clusters have requested ongoing support, particularly with humanities. That support and that cluster work is largely focused on the schools gaining a shared understanding of what progression looks like and what progression means within the subjects within humanities, including RVE. And I wanted to highlight the work of one cluster in the Vale in particular this afternoon, and that's the Penarth cluster. The Penarth cluster has been one of the most well-led, well-organised and most positive collaborative cluster working arrangements. They've had both secondary schools and all the primary schools have collaborated with regard to humanities as a whole for several days across the most recent academic year. And they've worked very successfully to develop very bespoke curriculum maps for humanities. They call them progression maps. And what the Penarth cluster have worked very hard on is specifying religion, values and ethics within those curriculum maps. So they've gone a step further with regard to collaborative working in RVE than several other clusters have done. And we were hoping that one of those schools from the Penarth cluster would be able to present to you this afternoon. But unfortunately, due to ASOS, they've not been able to attend. But it has been one of the most successful and one of the best led and well organised clusters across the region. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Nikki. So we offer bespoke support and advice to schools as and when's needed, completely tailored to their needs, following inquiries direct from the school themselves, often by the head teachers or by the improvement partners. This has included RVE curriculum design, collective worship support, as well as specific inquiries concerning changes to the right to withdraw and those sorts of things. And some of the schools, for example, that we've been developing and helping their curriculum planning. So we're currently working with Ysgol Cymraeg Pennygarth, Whitmore High, Hencoitra High, and we've also run RVE inset for the whole staff at Dinas Powers Infants and Primary School last week. So the support is ongoing in response to their requests and their needs. We also have networking opportunities including a primary humanities network, a secondary humanities network, and obviously we feed RVE into those with the other 4 subjects as well. We also have a separate secondary religious studies network where lots of heads of department and current practitioners for Key Stage 4 and 5 also join in. So we had a whole morning yesterday in person for the first time in many years, and that was lovely to see everyone face to face for the first time in over 2 years. So it's really an opportunity to share ideas, to collaborate and to develop ideas and resources, etc. So we also have a community area online on our website where they can access resources, professional learning materials. They can also book the professional learning events, and any network materials that we develop and use and share are also uploaded to that area. I also post, much to the annoyance, I'm sure, lots of announcements. So anything that's sent through, particularly from Welsh Government Hub, WGAC and DISC, we also upload anything that's relevant to RVE, RE, RS on there as well. We have funded projects, collaboration projects, some of which from the last year and the coming year includes designing a rich and engaging RVE curriculum. And we had 5 schools involved in that, 4 primary and 1 secondary. And then we are collaborating with the Church in Wales currently, looking at objective, critical and pluralistic RVE. That's quite an interesting project. And we're also going to be offering philosophy for children and RVE as a funded project, along with PL in September for up to 30 schools for the PL and 4 schools for the funded project. A very exciting one on science and religion and ways of knowing, collaborating with the Faraday Institute at Cambridge University. So that's going to be from a science and religion perspective of how we know what is truth and what is fact and that sort of thing. And digital humanities, RVE is going to be a part of that, along with the other 4 subjects as well, developing digital opportunity, knowledge and understanding of practitioners and embedding it into their curriculum. So professional learning, we've been offering things such as teaching challenging and sensitive issues within humanities. And as part of that, I delivered 2 sort of separate sections. One was on Islamophobia and one was on anti-Semitism. We've also had exploring approaches to anti-racism and diversity within RVE, both primary and secondary sessions. And we have the materials uploaded online for practitioners to continue accessing that information, along with exploring approaches to developing rich RVE within the curriculum for Wales, both primary and secondary again. Recently, we have run 2 sessions for RVE for governors, and that was across the 5 regions. And I've also recently completed a new members to SACRE and SAC professional learning online webinar. So we have playlists available on our website for practitioners and other people to access in their own time. For example, I developed one on non-religious philosophical convictions, including a podcast from Cathy Riddock from Humanism UK, and also a case study from a Pant secondary school looking at worldviews and what that looks like. And we're currently building on a new playlist for humanities, of which obviously RVE will be using, on inquiry and interpretation in humanities based on the statements of matters, what matters 1 and 2. Thanks, Nikki. So in response, obviously, to this change, the change in name and the change in all the legal requirements, fairly early on, we developed these posters. So there's 3 different poster packs. The first one on the left is actually designed for practitioners, but other stakeholders have been using them, governors, etc. Some have actually posted them on their school websites, and it just gives some information about the knowledge, experiences and the skills associated, and some possible questions, big questions that they can ask in relation to the statements and what matters. We also then looked at what's changed within the subject and what hasn't changed. And the reason we did what hasn't changed, because some people were quite concerned that the religion may be sort of disappearing or not as significant or prevalent from the old framework, when actually, as you see, it's still very much central to this subject. So these are just posters that have been used and circulated. We also support the LA, providing professional advisor support to the Vale of Glamorgan Local Authority SACRE, Standing Advisory Council for RE, and the current sort of shift with the two curriculums. We also have SAC for RVE as well. And we provide information on RVE curriculum developments or Directors of Education's meetings when we've been asked to attend and to give an overview of the changes within RVE. So it's with my absolute pleasure that I introduce to you now Neris, who actually trained with me as an ITT teacher back in the day, 20 odd years ago. So here she is from Whitmore High School. She's going to give you an insight into what they're doing at Whitmore. Thank you, Neris.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Neris Jones, Leader of Learning for RVE at Whitmore High School. Just to give you a little bit of information about the department, we have 2 hours a fortnight at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 for Core RE, and then we have an option group for GCSE in Year 10 and 11, and option groups at 12 and 13 as well then. Professional learning and performance management then is central to the development of staff at Whitmore High School, and developing links then with Central South has been essential in continuing to build on our success as a school. So some of the ways then in which Central South have supported us with the development of RVE at Whitmore High School is by providing leadership direction. I've got a list here, just a few things, some of the things Donna just mentioned, as well as to what Central South have offered to us, and I'll go through these then in the next few minutes. So by providing leadership direction, so Central South have provided direction then in planning and preparing for the RVE journey. There's an extensive amount of resources available online, and through the support of Central South then it's been easier to locate the relevant tools that are needed then for planning and reviewing our current programme of study and identifying then our next steps. For instance, locating the resources on Hub as well as Central South website. This has led then to an audit of schemes of learning where we're currently at, and to be able to review then what we need to do, what changes we need to make in order to move forward. Through the use of the website, I have used the playlist that Donna was referring to earlier. There's a playlist on there about the curriculum for Wales and RVE and how they fit with each other, basically. And through that playlist, it gives opportunities to check your knowledge, to check your understanding of curriculum for Wales and RVE, and also gives a case study there of a school where they have gone through their planning and shows their learning journey. So it gives an opportunity then to be able to reflect on how we can approach our planning as well then. And of course, having access to these playlists are essential then to be able to do in our own time, outside of school time, for instance, to help with that planning, because they're available and we can access them as and when we need them then. Thank you. Leadership thinking. So Central South have provided training and support for understanding what Curriculum for Wales means for RVE and vice versa. A crucial part of my audit of our current programme of study has been the clarity that has been given through discussions at network meetings, whether this is on Teams or in person as it was yesterday, which was really good to have that opportunity then to really discuss the RVE programme, look at what the progression steps are, the concepts for RVE, the sub-lenses. To be able to talk through those is essential in understanding them and then being able to apply them to our planning and our programme of study. It's helped me identify what has changed in RVE or RS and what has stayed the same, and that dialogue has been essential then as part of that process. We've also had many learning opportunities through Central South, through our network meetings. We're kept up to date then with these through emails from Donna or through checking in on the website. These are posted when the next network meeting is going to take place, what learning opportunities there will be, for instance, the philosophy for children that's coming up next academic year. Yesterday, for instance, when we met at the network meeting, we had Agorad Cymru come to speak to us, and they would talk to us about qualifications that they offer for RVE and looking at how that has taken on board, how it incorporates the curriculum for Wales and the skills that are essential for our learners. It's really helpful to be able to have that discussion and to be able to meet with these agencies, because it is about condensing the information that is there for us and understanding how that fits then for our learners and in our school, and also to simply see what opportunities there are there for our students, for our learners. Engaging in professional dialogue then through the opportunities that have been created by Central South have been excellent for sharing best practice, resources and examples of what is working well in different schools, and basically having that opportunity to work together. Bespoke learning opportunities then have given us the opportunity to take away materials, lesson planning, resources that we can think about how we can use these in our lessons and how we can adapt them to suit our learners, for instance. But they've been an excellent opportunity to think about how we can develop our schemes of learning so that we are covering and addressing worldviews, philosophical and non-philosophical convictions, for instance. There's an example of one that I attended there with Lat Blaylock, where we looked at different materials, and I was able to take away some of the materials from there to use with my Year 7s. There's a few examples of pieces of work that they've done on the next couple of slides, but that has given me an opportunity then to think about how I might change it, how we'd update things, for instance. So where we're at now, This slide here shows the guidance that, or some of the guidance that we've been given then on mapping out our RVE journey. Where we're at the moment, then we've carried out our overview, we've carried out a review and our audit of where we're currently at, and identified what are some of the changes that we need to do in order to move forward. The support then through Central South, Donna will be coming in next week. We've arranged for Donna to come in next week to have a look at some of our planning and our mapping for the Year 7s and Year 8s as they for next academic year, and to review the concepts that we are looking at, and to just have a look at our overview of lessons. Continuing then with the network meetings, and looking at projects that we can do as a humanities department. RVE will, in Year 7 and Year 8, it will continue to have discrete lessons in our school, but we do in the summer term look at doing a humanities project there, where we identify particular cross-curricular themes, where people look through them through their sub-lenses then. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into some of the work that we've done collaboratively together to work on planning RVE and implementing it in school. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Neris. We really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Neris. Nikki, do we have time to play the primary one, or?
So we have a presentation from Ebont Vine Primary. They stepped in last minute to replace, unfortunately, the school from the Penarth cluster that was no longer able to present. They've recorded this, so the slides hopefully have sound. So I will. It isn't a particularly long set of slides, so I will share at least some of their slides with you so that you can see some of the work that they have been doing. Please do let me know in the chat if you can't hear the sound. Thanks. And if I can thank the staff at Avant Vine for stepping in and preparing that for us. Thank you. Over to you, Donna.
Thanks, Nikki. So that draws us to the end of our presentation, and we were wondering if you had any questions.
Absolutely, Councillor Payne, straight in.
As usual, thank you very much. That was really, really interesting, and it's a bit of a change in terms of the ethics part as well. So, you know, it's kind of interesting to hear about it. I just wondered if you had any feedback from parents, or if you had any perspectives coming in. You know, as a parent, I just wondered, because of the change, has there been any feedback?
Nikki?
Oh, no, you.
So in terms of feedback for the curriculum and the change in RVE, I think schools are being transparent. They are increasing their communication about the change and the reason why the change has been implemented to reflect society, and where it has been transparent and those communications have taken place, you know, there have been positive responses in that sense. And I think practitioners are also having really positive, it can be overwhelming, but it's really exciting, the new RVE and what it means to the learners, to reflect them and engage them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you for that presentation. It was really interesting. Nikki, I haven't seen you in years. We used to teach in Whitchurch High together.
We did. It's lovely to see you as well.
Well, it's really, really interesting what you're doing. I mean, some of these, the depth of the philosophical questions that you're asking, I would have thought many of the teachers will have had a really good think about what they're going to say in the classroom, because many of us have not got to the bottom of what we think about some of these questions. And, you know, I think for some members of staff, it will be a kind of learning journey along with children, because of course children provide us with completely different perspectives on stuff, because they're not bogged down with the kind of mud and fog of everyday living, are they? So they can go straight to the point and ask really, really interesting questions. So I think that this kind of critical thinking about stuff that many parents just don't have time to consider, you know, between, you know, wiping noses and packing school lunches and making sure everyone's got their swimming kit or whatever. This is a really interesting way of encouraging children to think outside the box in a kind of, you know, metaphysical way. So I'm really, really pleased that this is going on, and you know, it's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I would just report from that the teachers that we're working with, I think the teachers who are exploring this sort of broader approach to RVE are actually, you know, generally really excited about some of the things that are going on in the classroom and some of the conversations and the discussions that they're engaging with pupils. They're seeing it as a real opportunity.
Good, good.
Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, ladies, for a fantastic report. It's very, very interesting listening to it all. And it's wonderful the development has come so quickly with so little resources provided. My only question was, how have you managed, you mentioned the Christian churches, the Catholic Church, how have you managed with the non-Christian religions? Have you had any feedback from them, or any problems with their again coming to terms with the way you teaching this, or have they just accepted it like everyone else has to?
So I mean, I'm happy. I suppose within the Vale, the schools that we've worked with most closely would be the Church in Wales schools, and I think the Church in Wales guidance is very clear about the non-religious philosophical convictions and how they should be incorporated within the curriculum, and also about other religions. And I think that was always a strength. I think we don't work as closely with some of the Catholic schools at the moment, the Catholic clusters, but very much embedded into their guidance is an understanding of RVE within the curriculum and the non-religious philosophical convictions that now are mandatory as well. Donna, is there anything you want to add there?
No, just to say that the new RED is obviously published online and has been approved by Welsh Government. But as you say, we haven't had really any direct consultation. Obviously, we've worked with the advisors from the Catholic Education Advisory Service and that sort of thing, and we're aware of what they're doing, but we haven't had any individual requests yet for bespoke support in that.
I was more concerned with the non-Christian religions. If you had any feedback from them at all with the way this has been taught.
In terms of other world religions, the wider
Yes,
yes. So obviously they still need to be reflected in that. If you look at the census data, we do have quite a broad and wide range of other world religions that are represented in Wales and certain localities in particular. So in terms of the feedback, I don't think they're concerned just the same as within Christianity. I mean, for example, on Sacre, we do have various Sacres. We have various faith member groups, and they've welcomed, they've embraced the broadening of the subject, along with obviously religious philosophical believers representatives on Sacre as well. And I think that's a real important shift that's happened and occurred. So I haven't heard any negative from them.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Morteo.
Hello, hi Donna, hi Nikki. I work with Donna and Nikki a lot on curriculum stuff, so really lovely to see this tonight. Part of my role is working with the Church in Wales on curriculum development. And I was in a school today, which I believe is part of the Penarth cluster, and the work they're doing is fantastic, including the non-religious philosophical convictions element. So that was really pleasing to see. And one of the things they highlighted as key to their development was their work as a cluster group and the support they've had from yourself. So thank you for that. It's really helpful. I'd also like to thank you as well for your collaborative approach with the Church in Wales. It's made a huge difference. Our schools know that they can come to us or they can come to you and they'll get the same advice. And that's really, really helpful. So just a huge thank you from us, and long may the good work continue.
Thank you so much. And that goes both ways, Becky, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Penn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your reports and presentation. You kind of touched on what I wanted to ask about with your answers to Councillor Norman about the way that religious education is taught, that some parents would not want it taught as a factual thing, but actually this is information on a religion. And so how do you base it that some people might not actually think it's fact, that these are what religious stories and things like that? Does that make sense? That some parents might not believe it is based in facts and things like that, that actually these are religious stories, not things that actually happened. So how do you cover that kind of thinking?
So the broad spectrum of views and approaches is that critical thinking and that critical engagement. And also if it's presented objectively, that's exactly what we're encouraging our learners to consider. What is fact, what is knowing, what is truth, and the variety of views that are presented within that. Quite often I see in the classroom a split between science and religion. You know, some learners are saying science says it, so it must be true, it must be fact. And it is going to be in this project. I cannot wait to explore what that means to different people, because obviously we do have some very famous scientific philosophers, theologians, believers, etc. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go with it and what the learners and what the schools, but I think it's really important that we are encouraging that critical engagement and that inquiry and thinking about sources, what those sources mean to different people and how they interpret. If you look at the statements of what matters too, it's all about interpretation. And obviously that's the pluralistic aspect of the RVE curriculum as well. It's not just pluralism within religion, but also between religion and non-religious philosophical convictions as well. So it's really broadened what they're looking at.
Brilliant. And can I just, in my son's school in Landock, myself and my partner, we always sort of urged when they have an assembly, we personally didn't want our son to attend an assembly because it was a religious assembly, but then it changed to an assembly of thanks. What we were trying to stress to the head was that if they did have someone in to talk, that it was always a Christian speaker, and that actually schools should be, I think, pushed, if this isn't already, to have rabbis and imams and humanists and all and every faith and non-believers to come in to speak. And we didn't feel that that was kind of being embraced fully or pushed for as much as just getting in a Christian speaker.
I think we're bordering on there on the difference between collective worship and the RVE curriculum as an academic subject, because collective worship, parents can still exercise their right to withdraw because it hasn't changed from Circular 1094. The legalities were never changed with the new curriculum. So it's still collective daily worship that is broadly and in the main Christian. And so that's the reason why you can still withdraw your child from that, because of that daily collective worship expectation that schools still have. Now, I know, for example, that Humanism UK, one of their campaigns is to change collective worship. So, you know, it'd be quite an interesting thing to explore with some of our children with their critical engagement moving forwards. But it's still legally required. But that's why you can exercise the right for your child to be withdrawn from that. But schools are developing a broader approach to it. I think particularly in line with RVE, but it's very distinctive to the curriculum subject and academic subject of RVE when you're learning about, you're not participating in.
Yeah.
And obviously that's why you can't be withdrawn from the academic subject.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the I think if it had been multiple faith speakers at a religious assembly, then we wouldn't have, it wouldn't have bothered us as much, because actually you're getting the full spectrum. The veil isn't just made up of Christians. So actually to have a speaker from every religion and every non-religion in, for us, sits better than it just being Christian, because as I said, the veil is not just a Christian, it's not just Christian.
It's nothing stopping a school from inviting multi-faith and people with non-religious at all. That, you know, that's connecting with the community on so many different levels. That is good practice, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Nikki, did you want to join in?
I was just going to say at that point, certainly the guidance for religion, values and ethics, the subject in the curriculum, does, you know, it provides a list of, you know, what is classed as religion, and includes religions like Jehovah's Witness, etc. It talks about the various forms of Christianity, the various forms of Islam. They also provide in the guidance of a lengthy list of what classes as a non-religious philosophical conviction. So very much the guidance is encouraging schools in the RVE curriculum to adopt that very broad approach. And one of the things that Donna has put together as some supporting material is sort of links to different organisations. One of the things she's working on at the moment is trying to work with a mosque to get a kind of virtual tour, so that could be used by different schools who are perhaps not able to get the bus to go and look at it. So we're looking at those kind of signposting to those kinds of resources for schools. But I think the RVE curriculum and the RVE curriculum guidance encourages that very broad look at religion and faith, which will lead schools to be bringing in a wider range of different people with lived experience of different faith and belief traditions. And in an RVE lesson, those people will be there to teach the pupils and to show the pupils about their faith, so that the pupils can learn about those people's faith and how important those people's faith are to them. But very much in the RVE lessons, it is learning about faith. Whereas in collective worship, the legislation is still the same, that it needs to be broadly Christian in character, and that pupils can still be withdrawn from it. So I think in the past, perhaps many schools had used assembly time to do a bit of sort of RE and a bit of collective worship. I think there's now a more clear distinction because the curriculum is now different. I think that collective worship is now seen in schools in a much more distinct way.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo the thanks of everyone else for this presentation. It's wonderful. And it was great to see some of the questions from the children. I'm very interested in feedback from and how it's affecting the children and what their views on it is. I'm just wondering that in the future, maybe you can come back and give us some more feedback as it progresses on how the children are feel about it, and also the different faiths and how the different schools and teachers and parents, maybe we can collect some data on that so we can get a good view of how it's going and what's happening out there and how people feel, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments from councillors? No. Thank you for that presentation. I think everyone enjoyed it and it was fascinating. So I move that we note the presentation, and thank you to everyone who's contributed today, Donna, Nikki, Kerrison, Neris, and the staff at Bont Vine who heroically stepped into the breach at the last minute. So please pass on our thanks to them.
Will do. Thank you.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you, and I'd like to pick up on what Councillor Goodjohn said and ask if we could have some feedback, you know, after you've taught it for a year or so we can have some idea of what the response is and how much you've had to adapt it. Because I can imagine when you're asking philosophical questions like this, it's going to raise even more philosophical questions. So I'd be really interested to see the progress of the curriculum as you've got it at the moment, and the lesson plans, and the, you know, the scheme of work, and how that's worked out and whether it needs to be adapted, because it's so interesting. Thank you very much. So if we could ask for an update, say in a year or so, I'd be very grateful.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Or perhaps September next year.
If Councillor Goodjohn is happy with that, you'd like to move that in a year's time, we can get another update.
Yes, please. I'd like to. That would be great. Thank you.
Great, lovely. I'm happy to second that. So, lovely. Thanks again, everyone, for your contributions. And Neris, feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I understand if you have other things to do this evening.
Thank you. I've got the school show, so I'm going to leave now then.
Don't worry about it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much then. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay. Thanks, everyone. So we'll move on to agenda item 4, the Welsh Language Standards Annual Monitoring Report. Over to Tom Bowring.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Good evening, committee. Thank you for taking this reference this evening. As you say, Chair, it's of the annual Welsh Language Standards Monitoring Report. The report that went to Cabinet on the 6th of July serves two purposes. Firstly, it demonstrates the compliance with the 174 Welsh language standards that the Council's required to comply with, and there's also an additional requirement to produce a strategy to promote the Welsh language across 5 years, and the second appendix to the reference provides the update on the Welsh language promotion strategy. So Appendix A to the report shows that progress against the standards. It sets out a series of achievements that the Council's made in terms of pursuing compliance with the standards. So mentioning around the development of the Council's website, our internal communications, the way that we interact with customers, the provision of learning for staff in Welsh, training, workforce support, reflection of the partnership, importantly with Menter Bryn Morgannwg across the county, and there's a significant amount of work that's undertaken with them. The appendix then also sets out an updated action plan against each of the standards, so showing Cabinet and your committee chair the status of compliance against each, and also some details of any Welsh language complaints that have been handled by the Commissioner. The second appendix, Appendix B, provides committee with a progress update against the first year of the new Welsh language promotion strategy, which runs across the next 5 years. Our Welsh language promotion strategy is structured around the 3 themes from Cymraeg 2050. So you've got a series of actions aligned with those themes, providing some updates. So those themes are around increasing the number of Welsh speakers, increasing the use of Welsh, and creating favourable conditions both in terms of infrastructure and context. Within the promotion strategy, there's a significant emphasis on collaborative and partnership working. So for each of the actions and commitments, Chair, within that update, you'll see the partners that the Council is working with, and it also shows the alignment with the Council's corporate plan's wellbeing objectives and also the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan, or the WESP, because those two documents are working together, obviously the WESP having a specific educational context to it. So an update is provided for each of the actions that have been set out within the 5-year promotion strategy, showing you the progress, and in response to feedback from committees in the last couple of years, further feedback, testimonials, pictures are used to illustrate the updates, along with any quantitative data that has been collected as part of demonstrating our progress. So the report is being brought to you this evening, Chair, to consider alongside corporate performance and resources, and the recommendation is that you consider, and if you endorse, that the report will then be published. Obviously, I'll be delighted to take any questions, and I'll do my best. There's lots of data in there from lots of different departments, so if I haven't got it to hand, I'll be able to get it to you very quickly.
Lovely, thank you, Tom. So the councillors have any questions on the monitoring report? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Tom. It's a very, very detailed and involved report, isn't it, with lots of stuff in it. So I just wanted to pick up on a few things in terms of the report part. I was interested in the response time for Welsh language calls in seconds. It took me a while to work out how long it was in minutes. So I just wondered, is there a comparison with the response time with English language calls? Just so I've got some kind of baseline for, is it a good, are these good stat, you know, are they good, are they bad, are they? So I kind of like a comparison with response times on that. That'd be good, so we know what the progress is further down the line in terms of improvements. There was a bit about Welsh learners, and I noted that some were staff and some were residents. It would be good to know if what element was residents and what part was staff. This is all on page 4. I got some little bits, sorry, apologies for this in advance, Tom. But there was just some kind of statistical stuff that I'd probably like a little bit more information on. And then the National Centre for Learning Welsh continues to offer free work Welsh courses. You know, what's the take up in terms of our staff? How many have accessed that provision? I can give you all these afterwards as well, Tom, just not to put you on the spot too much. And then there was just a bit about, in terms of the Welsh language provision, there was, this is page 14, it was the Welsh Government developed various projects and frameworks. There was a bit around bronze, silver and gold standard within Welsh language provision, and I just would have liked a bit more information on that, about the content of it, so I kind of know what I'm reading really. And similarly for, it seemed to be explained better in terms of the English medium provision, because I could get a handle on that. But I just would have liked a little bit more information on that if that's possible. And that was on page 15. I can provide you with these afterwards as well. But generally really good information. It's just I would have liked on those specific a bit more data if that's possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I can certainly get the data for you in terms of some of those queries on the uptake of Welsh language training and the content. So that's no problem at all to follow up on that. In terms of the contact handling time, the average wait time was, I think, 257 seconds on the Welsh language line in comparison with an overall average of 327 seconds across the contact centre. But I can get you the specific handling time if we exclude the Welsh language line from that. It has traditionally been at our calls have been answered traditionally quicker on the Welsh language line. However, as the report sets out, we have been, along with lots of other local authorities struggling to recruit Welsh
Yeah, I saw that.
speaking staff in the contact centre. I'm very pleased that 2 new colleagues who are fluent in Welsh have joined the contact centre in the last month. So that's starting to improve that there. And we're also exploring the opportunity to work collaboratively with other councils in order to bolster that Welsh language provision as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The councillors, have any other questions or comments for Tom? No. Okay, so the recommendation is that we endorse the annual Welsh monitoring report. So if I move that, can we have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I can second that, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Lovely. Moving on to agenda item 5. So it's the closure of accounts 2022-23. Over to Gemma.
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much. So this is the revenue accounts for 22-23. The accounts are now complete in draft form and they're with the external auditors, Audit Wales, for their review, which we currently expect will report back in November. So it's been a challenging year with them continuing to experience pressures across the council. We have reported throughout the year about pressures around pay awards. At the centre, these seem to have been mitigated, whilst not ideally through staff vacancies to a certain extent. So there's no specific overspends that are being reported as a result of the pay awards corporately. Looking at schools first in terms of the areas that are relevant to this scrutiny committee, there has been a significant drawdown on schools balances, which I think we were expecting to see. So they have reduced by just over 6 million, and that's set out in Appendix 2. And the schools that have ended the 22-23 financial year in deficit are highlighted in yellow in that appendix. So there were 9 schools that ended in a deficit position, and I think it does illustrate the impact that some of that COVID funding has had on school balances in the previous 2 financial years as well. Looking at the kind of central learning and skills position in terms of strategy, culture, community learning and resources, there have been some pressures, most notably school transport, which of course is managed by the Environment and Housing Directorate, but also some pressures around long-term sickness, some transition costs and school repairs and breakfast clubs. There were some favourable variances there relating to staff costs, the pension budgets and private nurseries. There have been a number of transfers in from reserves, funding in part things like the transition costs and also the demountable costs at Ysgol-y-Derry. And there have also been some ring fence transfers into reserves. So for instance, we transfer into reserves the surplus against the borrowing budget within strategy, community learning and resources, and that enables us to set aside funding for sustainable community learning schemes. In terms of additional learning needs, we are reporting overspends most significantly in relation to children's placements and recruitment income, and committee be aware that those are overspends that we've reported for some years and tend to feature within the budget cycle. We have some favourable variances that are offsetting that, and those are largely to do with some additional funding that have been experienced by the Directorate, and there's been a contribution from the ALN reserve to offset. And then in terms of standards and provision, favourable variance of 237,000, some overspends relating to pupil engagement and pupils educated other than at schools, but offset in part by reserves. And then the liaison and engagement posts have also been funded by reserves. At an overall council level, there was a surplus of 1.89 million, and there were some allocations that are relevant for this scrutiny committee. So £850,000 that was transferred to reserves to be utilised to support additional learning needs within mainstream schools. £200,000 that was transferred into reserves to support schools in special measures, and a £200,000 allocation to support children and young people, and that was targeted at supporting that group over the summer period. In terms of reserves, you may recall that as part of the preparation for the 23-24 budget, we did do some significant reallocation of reserves, and that's also reflected within the reserve balances that are reported within this report. Those were the key points that I was going to draw out, but I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Gemma. So I'll hand over to councillors if there are any questions. Nothing at the moment. I just wanted to touch on something, Jenna, regarding the children's placement budget. I was just wondering if you had the statistics for the number of pupils going out of county and taking up independent provision. So there's the 337k overspend, but I was interested if the statistics of the number of pupils was available and if there are any projections for future years.
They will be available, and we can absolutely ask for that information and report it back.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Gemma. Any other queries, councillors? No. Okay, thank you for that. So I move the recommendations, note the report, note the financial measures taken and the allocation of the overall council surplus. So I move we note that. If I could have a seconder.
Yes, I can second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on, agenda item 6, capital closure of accounts 22-23. Back to Gemma.
Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of the capital position, again, draft to council with the auditor, and in terms of the outturn position, we had relatively low net slippage. There obviously had been slippage throughout the year, and that is a real mixed position of some funding that was brought into 22-23 from 23-24 budgets, and some funding that's been slipped into 23-24 to allow schemes to progress or allow for delays in schemes. So in terms of the learning and skills budget, the adjusted budget was 32 million and the actual spend was 34 million. And the majority of that brought forward funding into 22-23 related to the Sustainable Communities for Learning schemes. Within the report, we've tried to highlight some of the successes within the programme. So there are a couple of paragraphs. It's obviously very condensed on the progress that's being made against the Sustainable Communities for Learning schemes within the report. Within Appendix 2, we're setting out the kind of progress, the programme, and you'll see that there's the inclusion of some late additions to the programme as well. And within Appendix 3, we're setting out the slippage position, so both the funding that's been brought forward from 23-24 and the funding that's been slipped into 23-24 as well. Happy again to take any questions on this report.
Thanks, Gemma. Over to councillors. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Gemma. Really concise and efficient as ever. But I did have a question about boundaries and fences. Sorry, I got a moth. Boundaries and fences. I note on the capital bid 23-24.
Yeah.
It says there's 275 for safeguarding and security of external school boundaries. Is that anywhere specific? Is it, you know, I was just interested in why. Again, I did raise this previously in the last budget period, but I just wondered, is that a generic thing? Is that an ongoing thing that's going to be inbuilt?
I think there was a list that we had as part of the 23-24 budget cycle, so we would be able to provide the list of schools, and I think that might have been identified as, you know, as part of the condition surveys, although I'm not entirely sure. So again, I can confirm that. So it's multiple schools where there are issues identified with the boundaries and fences, and obviously, you know, it's good that where those can be progressed ahead of schedule that they can be.
Okay.
But happy to forward on a list of those schools.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Gemma, for those presentations. So the recommendations here are to note the year-end capital position, note the additional scheme budget set out in Appendix 1, note the summary position of changes in the Capital Programme Directorate, and to note the emergency power improved in respect to the slippage. So I move that if anyone would like to second.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. So we move on to agenda item 7. That's the annual delivery plan monitoring report, quarter 4 performance. Over to you, Morwen.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Is it okay if I share my screen? I will share the presentation now that we've got.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Give me just a second. Gosh. It's open on my screen, but I can't find it. I don't know how to do it.
We're willing to wait more, don't worry.
Chair, just a bit of light relief. I got into work one day and my monitor was completely upside down and nobody could figure out why or how to put it right. So I feel your pain.
Wow. Right. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I can't see you now, so I can't see any hands either if anybody puts their hands up, okay? Right, well, you've got the report. It is a lengthy report and you've seen all the appendices with it. So I'm just going to run through the presentation, if that's okay, with a few highlights from it. So you will have seen that, sorry, I think you can probably see Councillor Payne in the corner of your screen as well, can you? I don't know. She's in the corner of my screen, I don't know if she's on yours. You'll have seen that the overall RAG status for our annual delivery plan is green, but looking specifically at learning and skills relating to this scrutiny committee, we have got a few reds, as you'll have seen, and there's a couple of ambers, but we'll raise those a little bit later. But overall, we are very pleased with the overall performance of it. So looking at what we have achieved in relation to objective 1, I won't read out all of them because you have got them within your papers anyway, but Tom Bowring has already referred to this about the Learn Welsh programme, and there's been 53 enrolments in the quarter with 9 different courses. This has been offered to staff as well, which is really positive. I've been on the course myself doing it. I haven't been able to commit enough time, but it certainly has been really, really good. ALN have continued to develop their website and they're doing further work actually as well to help to enable parents and carers to have easier access to ALN support services. The objective 2, the support learning, employment and sustainable growth. You will know that we have new schools that seem to be popping up here, there and everywhere, the latest of which is Ysgol Sant Barich, which has just opened now on the waterfront. And you will see as well, or you may have seen on Court Road in Barry, what is Derw Newydd, which is formerly the PRU, as you'd be aware, which is now part of Ysgol Derry. That is going to be opening in readiness for September. We particularly, well, we're pleased about all of them, obviously, but that one I think is, you don't have many PRU type provisions that are of such a phenomenal standard. So it is certainly not before time that it's been due. As you'll be aware, thus far, those children and young people have been based at Amelia Trust Farm and the old courthouse in Cowbridge as well, which hasn't been good enough really. Our Communities for Work programme has continued to be very good, very strong, and you'll see the percentages there of the number of people who've engaged in it. So 211% against target, which is an increase from last year. We've also got a significant increase as well, 90% success rate on accredited courses for learners, which has exceeded the target as well. And looking at the educational, the development of needs, supporting the needs for children with social, emotional, mental health difficulties. Our engagement service has been working flat out with the schools to support those. What we've also done as well is increased capacity for children who are, or young people who are considered to be anxious learners and unable to access school. And we'll have talked previously to you about the Horizon provisions, which operates out of Ysgol-y-Derry. Well, that is going from strength to strength, and we will have an additional class there this year. In supporting people at home and in their community, we have had schools signing up for the Violence Against Women training, domestic abuse, and there's 738 staff who have completed that. And it's something that we also complete too as officers within the council. Our libraries have been, sharing incredible programmes, and in fact, the library service came to a team day, a directorate team day that we had quite recently, and we were all blown away really by what is on offer and that we haven't been aware of. So, if you have an hour or so to spare, then I would certainly advise you or suggest you go to one of the libraries. For Objective 4, we're looking at new technologies continually. Landswick Learning Centre community, they're using, developing their work. We're looking at promoting active travel across the schools, and there's a new loan bike scheme which is now available. And the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, so that's the team that's building our new schools. They are contributing significantly to the Project Zero, and you will know that South Point School was the first school to be a carbon zero school. Well, we now have got the same as well in Ysgol Sant Barrick too, and it will also be the case for St Nicholas as well when that is finished as well. So in relation to the actions that we've got within learning and skills, 92% had a green performance status, and the final 8% had a red status. But of those 8 measures reported then, 63% were attributed a green status and 37% red. Now, with the red, which is within the paperwork that you have, if you wanted to look further, of the red actions, you will see that they have either been, there's been reasons behind them being red, either they've been postponed, projects have been held up, or they've now been carried forward to the new financial year. For areas of future focus and improvement, the first one were Objective 1, the digital strategy. There have been delays with that, so that's continuing now throughout this quarter. The children or young people who are considered to be NEET, so not in education, employment or training, we work continuously to try and reduce that. We've got a team who are involved in the door knocking. Our relationships with Careers Wales and other partners have strengthened, and we are doing everything we possibly can. Unfortunately, last year, the figure did rise briefly, a little bit, sorry, to 1.48%, which I think equates to 25 children. Too many, in our view. We don't want to have that, but we are doing everything we can, working with the schools and everybody else as well, and that is a continuing objective for us. So Objective 2, the number of referrals to engagement service has risen significantly. So we have seen since COVID that the number of families and children who have difficulties and the behaviours that we're seeing in schools is causing difficulties in many cases, but the engagement service are doing a phenomenal job. You will be aware that all schools have received training on a trauma-informed strategies, and as well we have undertaken a project as well with a consultant called Paul Dix, who is also working with all our schools as well. But obviously these strategies, it's fantastic, but it takes time to embed. But we are seeing huge growth. Attendance is a concern. I hope that you will have seen banners in many places. All our schools have got them outside. We are not happy with our attendance, and it has fallen nationally. by 3% on average. In the Vale, ours has gone down by 4%, so we are not happy with that, and we don't want to be there. Approximately, at the moment, it changes week on week, but currently, as a local authority, we are 10th out of the 22 in Wales for this academic year, but we want to be higher. The margins are very small, but it is something that is a lot of awareness raising that has been going on. It feels as if I'm talking about attendance in every meeting and conversation I have, but certainly as part of the strategy, we have gained support from all head teachers in sharing their data with each other. So that is not to be shared with governing bodies or externally for any other use or comparative use, but it is purely so that as the schools can see where they are, how they can learn from similar schools in a similar demographic, and sharing that. And the conversations are happening a lot, and it's good. We saw an increase over the last month, but we want to see more again. Objective 3, continuing to work on a whole school approach to look at food poverty in schools, and that's in line with the Move More, Eat Well agenda. Something I often struggle to say, actually. If I get it the wrong way around, then it becomes completely wrong, doesn't it? And also continue to maximise opportunities, support to signpost citizens to culture and arts activities, which would help with their well-being. And finally, on to objective 4, we still invested in carbon reduction measures, supporting the delivery of Project Zero, and looking at the number of children needing transport to school, that is spiralling costs, and that is a real challenge for us. I was in a meeting only yesterday, actually, looking at children who require transport, as well as the taxi or a minibus or whatever that might be. It's also funding of people to accompany them as well. But costs are absolutely spiralling, and I think we've had quoted that some taxi firms, because they've got they are in demand and they've got the market there, they're doubling their costs in some cases. Okay, if I can work out how to stop sharing my screen now. There we go. Are there any questions from anybody?
Thank you, Morwen. Over to councillors. Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Thank you for that. It's really, really good and very well presented. The information is really clear as well. But I wanted to say about, kind of well done on the PRU unit as well, and I think we're anticipating more uptake on the pupil referral unit. So I was interested in the 2 things that you've raised in terms of the objective, the 4 objectives in terms of attendance. Is that something we should be looking at as a committee in terms of learning and culture, in terms of current trends, looking at the data, exploring the why, really? I mean, we know part of the why is post-COVID culture, but I would be interested to examine that a little and drill down that a little bit further. And then the other thing is transport to school. I'd be interested, obviously the costs have increased, as with everything, but is there more uptake in school transport? I'd also be interested in the why of that as well. Why? Okay. And do you know why? I mean,
so going back, first of all, in relation to Derw Newydd, do you mind if I correct you and say it's not a PRU?
Go on, correct. What?
It's not a PRU.
Okay.
So we closed our pupil referral unit and opened Derw Newydd. And the reason that was a decision made by Cabinet, and it would have come to scrutiny probably before you were on committee.
Yeah, okay, fine.
And it was to change the entire focus of it being PRUs are associated with bad behaviour.
Oh,
I think that is the general idea with the PRU. Children who are there because of their bad behaviour. We've got the same children there, but we've got a very different approach.
Yeah.
So it is more now about a supportive therapeutic approach and the provision, which was why when the decision was taken by Cabinet for it to now sit within Ysgol Derry, because they've got the specialisms there, they've got the support, and the young people have now got a far wider and greater access to things that meet their needs.
Yeah, so you're saying there's more of a focus on well-being then, as opposed
to there's a lot on
I
that.
kind of get that.
Yeah. So the new building, when that opens, will be incredible. And if you're able to visit, it would be, because they're going to have workshops as well, so hands-on trades that are developed. But your first question then, I think it was about attendance.
Yeah.
So we will be bringing a report to committee September or October on attendance. That's already in the pipeline, because it is important. I'm glad that you've asked about it. Everybody has got to get behind it's improving, and it's not just about our figures or our ranking compared to other local authorities. This is about children being in school, because if they're not in school, they're not learning, as we all know. That is not rocket science, is it?
Yeah.
We are looking that the inclusion team are doing a huge amount of work supporting schools, and you won't be surprised to know that Pencoitra has poor attendance. It is our school with the most challenge, and the school has caused us the greatest concern, as you'll know, since the Eston visit. And their attendance is, it is simply not good enough. And the school there, they are doing a huge amount of work to look at attendance. It is one of the recommendations from their Eston inspection. We've met with Eston today, actually, and they will be looking specifically at attendance in the autumn term to see what the school is doing to try and improve. And they're doing everything, but it feels as if you're turning a tanker with some aspects of that. It is, but a lot of that with attendance, in the discussion I had in Pencoitra today, is if the children aren't attending, or if they aren't in class, why is that? Is it because the learning isn't engaging enough? So we already know that the teaching and learning isn't good enough. Eston have said that. So we've got to get the teaching right. We've got to get the learners back into school, and it's the whole caboodle with that, then, isn't it? But yeah, we will be bringing that report September or October.
Great, thank you.
What was the second question you asked?
The one was about transport to school.
Yes,
I get the increased cost bit, but the other thing, that was a why question, obviously, is about, is there more uptake on transport, and why is there more uptake on transport? Not just about increased numbers, but is it about support for getting to school? Is it because there are disadvantages for young people and children to get there? I'm just interested in why the increase, really.
So I don't know if there's been a greater increase in it. We could find that out. I was in a meeting yesterday about transport for Derry Newydd, actually, when the children start in the Barry site in September. And what we were told, Cardiff don't provide transport for children in specialist provisions if they are within the 3-mile boundary limit. And we do for Ysgol y Derry, and there are children who live very nearby, but if they didn't have the transport, they wouldn't be going to school. And our view is we need to pay the cost of the transport now, because otherwise the long-term impact on those young people is just unthinkable. So, and with Derry Newydd, we agreed yesterday, even though there are quite a number of young people who live within the 3-mile radius and live in Barry itself, the same applies. These young people are not going to go to school unless they're picked up from their house and go to taken there. So the head of school, Matt Sweden, is actually looking at all of those children on an individual basis to see which ones would go to school, in a consultation with the young people themselves, which ones would go themselves and walk, or those that he knows will need the transport. So there's a decrease in many ways, but there's an increase in some others. But if you want to know if there's an increase in numbers, I don't know. I could find out, but I can't imagine there would be, because it's the same children.
And I was also interested in the correlation with the post-COVID, like I was on about the trends and culture of attendance. Is it to do with that culture and post-COVID culture, about being out in the community, about the non-attendance thing around, there's lots of fear, there's lots of things around well-being. That's really interesting for the why again.
Absolutely, it is. The number of persistent absences, so they would be children who have attendance below 80%, that has absolutely rocketed since COVID. And we've seen more holidays. So I've emailed all chairs of governors last week and head teachers to say, we don't, as a local authority, have a policy. We can't, because there's a head teachers and a governing body policy on attendance. but we are not promoting holidays. We're not promoting authorising holidays either. It's up to individual governing bodies, but we are urging them to consider whether or not they should be doing so, because it feels as if, particularly since COVID, I understand why people might want to take a holiday during term time because of costs or commitments or whatever, but it feels as if people are thinking it's okay to take 10 days now, and I will take those because I'm entitled to take 10 days, rather than it being in exceptional circumstances. So we've seen a lot of that. I think we've seen a lot as well of Friday-itis, should I say. Long weekends, you know, you'll have lots of children who, you know, grandparents have got caravans, wherever that might be, and they'll go for long weekends. So there's still a lot of that. And, you know, they've had a rough time after COVID, so let's take them away for a weekend. And I totally, you know, that's not meant as a criticism.
No.
But we have to get the children back in school, you know, fundamentally.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Marwen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
You've answered quite a lot of the questions I was going to put about attendance. As I've said before, my own child was having 1 day off a week after COVID, just fatigue, just couldn't do a whole week. I believe that is getting better, but when I'm sort of chatting to her friends and they're saying, oh, we're taking a couple of days off because of, you know, the prices go up in school holidays, so that's come back. Oh, and it doesn't matter. And I'm saying, well, it does matter, you know, it's very important. But I think that's creeping back in because of the cost of living. So I think that's going to impact on us. But a very thorough report, and I really enjoyed reading it, because it's attendance has always been I was attendance governor at the primary school, and it's interesting why people don't go. I mean, it could be the rain, it could be, you know, we've had bad weather, it probably affected attendance, especially in primary children. They don't go because it's raining. You know, it's there are lots of factors, and
so there's so many in there. Attendance is generally lower in secondary actually than primary, and my thinking is because in primary school parents take the children to school. Secondary school, they get their own way there, and you know, I was a secondary school teacher myself, and you know full well the parents have gone to work and the kids stay in bed and don't go to school. You know, that was often a problem. But yeah, we just need. I understand why people are taking holidays because of the cost, and I you feel as if, well, you've got your parental hat on and your humane hat on, plus you got your officer hat on, haven't you? You know, but we just need these children back in school and learning.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges.
So, thank you, Chairman. Been following the attendance story with my own school, my brand new school on the waterfront.
Lucky you.
Which is beautiful. I want to go off attendance. I mean, if someone wants to come in after me, that's fine against that. But I was really asking about the maker spaces that were brought up. And it says that it's a completed action. I take it that means in the planning stage rather than the implementation stage. And I was just wondering where we are with that.
It doesn't sit within my area, but I believe it will be because the maker spaces are now there. They're there, they're open, they're functioning.
Okay. Didn't notice it yesterday. Okay, I'll have another look. Thanks for that.
Where was that, Councillor Hodges?
Barry.
Okay. I'm not certain.
Fair enough. Before I finished that with that, thank you. But before we finish the meeting, but after the subject, if I can just have a quick word on something, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay, thank you, Morwen. So we've heard everyone's views. So the recommendation is we note the report and views and recommendations. Everyone's views from here is referred to Cabinet for consideration and approval. So I move that. If I could have a seconder.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Agenda, and that's the last agenda item.
If I may just add or to clarify there for the sake of the minutes, which points you would like to be formally referred back to Cabinet?
So the comments on school attendance and Councillor Hodges.
Hello.
Councillor Hodges' comments on the maker places I thought were important to get some clarity on that, and the committee's comments on school attendance.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Well, my understanding is that the Barry Makerspace is already open because you can book it online. So, you know, I'm happy to investigate further if you couldn't find it. But if you want to come and look at the one in Penarth, which is the Barry one is modelled on.
No, you're all right.
Okay.
Okay. I think Councillor Hennessy seconded that, so I think that's okay. So that's all for this evening. So thank you everyone for your attendance.
Chairman, just briefly.
Nick?
Yeah. Now we finished the meeting, I just thought it'd be a good time to ask, what happened to the last set of minutes?
Apologies, if I may just say there that the next set of the previous minutes will be circulated with the September's agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for your participation tonight this year, and I hope you have a good August, and I'll see you all in September.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night. Good night all.
Yeah.
Good night.